Well, time is absolutely flying. It's the end of June. Can you even cope? It's been like a rocket from the beginning of the year, especially because we moved our Raw Rewards up to the start of the year in order to kind of be able to get in the cycle of the Raw Rewards and the Winners Retreat all in the same year, and also to keep our awards away from the busyness of the end of the year that seems to always happen. And so it is time to start thinking about all of the end of financial year things that you need to tick off your list. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. So many of us, when we start out in small business, we don't really take seriously the numbers side of our business. We get creative, innovating new products, we get excited, nurturing new customers, and then we kind of just wish and hope and pray that there's going to be enough money in the bank, and then if there is, we just keep moving forward. But the end of financial year is a really good time to stop and reflect. And hopefully you're at a stage in your business, and it's okay if you're not, no judgment, but hopefully you have some confidence and some excitement around the numbers in your business, because of course the numbers don't lie. So being able to dive into those numbers and figure out where the business is at is really, really important, not only for the longevity of your business, but also for your own mental health. When you're sticking your head in the sand and you don't know whether or not you're going to be able to make payroll each week, it's a really stressful place to be. And so we want to be really clear and really transparent about our numbers in our business and how we're getting to those numbers, what those numbers look like, what they're going to look like now, in 3 months, in 6 months, and in 1 year's time. And then we can make really strategic decisions based around what those numbers look like. And so that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. And I guess that first step is, taking your head out of the sand, getting really clear, looking at what is there, looking at what is not there, where it's going to be coming from, and really understanding where you're at. A good way to do that and a good way to start is by getting your paperwork in line. And so that is kind of my point number one for today, making sure that you are going to streamline this entire process for yourself, for your bookkeeper, for your accountant, any of the professionals that are going to be involved in things that are going to happen at this time of year. So you want to make sure you have, your income statements and your profit and loss statements and your business related purchases, any of the assets in the business. You want to make sure you have all of the paperwork for those things. If you've got motor vehicles that you're claiming through your business and travel expenses that are directly related to your business, you want to make sure that you have all the paperwork for that as well. If you're somebody that has just a pile of receipts on the corner of your desk, or if you have a cardboard box underneath your shelves that has all of your receipts, you want to get all of those electronicized and into the system so that you can make sure you have a really, really good track of what is where. You also want to make sure you have all of your paperwork in line in terms of previous tax returns and business activity statements. Make sure you've got your GST paperwork sorted, and any superannuation that you're paying to employees of yours. You want to make sure that all of the paperwork in regards to that is up to date as well. And this stuff can seem scary. So don't do it all yourself. Don't feel like you need to, it needs to be one of those jobs that you dread and that you wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh, I can't believe I have to do that. Engage professionals. There are people who love this stuff. And that was one of my biggest learnings in the beginning of my business, that I didn't actually have to do it all. And just because I owned the business didn't mean that I had to do every single thing in the business. One of the smartest things I ever did was to engage really qualified and clever people to be able to take off my hands the things that I was not good at in my business, and preparing my business for any end of financial year work that has to be done was not one of my strengths. I could absolutely lead a team and engage employees. I could nurture and build relationships with customers. But, when it came to making sure all those receipts were in zero, no thank you. Somebody else is far more clever, far more skilled at doing that than I am. And so outsourcing is not something you need to be afraid of, especially when it comes to this area. You should be leaning into that and making the most of these professionals who love doing this stuff, especially if that's not you. Talking about Xero, whatever system you're using, I use Xero because it's super simple and I've been using it for years, and absolutely it changed my life when I first started using it because it was really clear and I could really understand it. In saying that, though, I do need to give you a little disclaimer. I do have professionals around me that are, tidying up my mistakes in Xero and making sure I'm using it correctly. It's not just me out there going for it. in which I'm sure that is a possible way to do it. But just for me, I like to have someone double check my work. So I do have a fabulous bookkeeper and I do have a fabulous accountant, and they both really keep me in line and keep me in check to make sure that all of the different accounts in Xero all match up and they're all doing what they should be doing. And so I encourage you to get your life simplified with an online accounting tool if you haven't already. Perhaps it's not something that you can set up for the end of this financial year, but if you're not using something already, I encourage you to jump on in for the start of the next financial year. You will absolutely never regret it. Yes, it does cost money, but these are the things that we invest in to make our lives easier. These are the things we invest in to run our business more smoothly. And I completely want to encourage you to do exactly that. And there's so many different options, but as I said, we love and use Xero. The next thing I want you to think about is meeting your superannuation requirements, because that's super important. You have super to pay before the 30th of June. And so you really want to make sure that you get that in on time, and making sure that you have everyone on your team superannuation details and making sure they really understand where that money's going and how much money is going there, and you're doing all of your payments on time. That is super important when it comes to your business. And full disclosure, in the early days of my business, there were superannuation payments that I just plain forgot about and just didn't happen on time. And then I had to pay late fees because I didn't get it done. I was like, oh, hang on, that's right. That quarter is done. I was too busy working in my business. I was too busy, preparing for that brand new event and looking forward to this launch and putting all the documentation together that needed to happen for that. And so I got swept up in the working in my business and forgot this very, very important part of working on my business. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that, of course, because of your obligations, but you also don't want to do that to your team. You want to make sure that you are really on top of your super payments. So make sure you speak to your accountant and you get yourself sorted when it comes to super before the end of the financial year. And the last thing I want to say about preparing yourself for the end of financial year is I want you to really be on top of all of your obligations in terms of due dates. Because as I said before, when I didn't pay my super on time, I had to pay a late fee, and the Australian Tax Office does have certain dates and times and things that need to be paid by a certain date, and they give you, plenty of time. And if we forget about this, then we really get ourselves into trouble, and we don't want to do that. And I have found that in the past, if I am really on top of my numbers, if I'm knowing what's coming in, what's going out, what I'm doing forecasts of what's coming up in the future, then it's really so much easier to be able to understand whether or not I'm going to, have the cash flow in order to pay that bill, or whether that's going to need to be paid over time. My accountant has me pretty on check when it comes to regular amounts that I'm putting aside for those big payments that I know that are going to come out. Sometimes I look at that money that I'm putting aside and think, gosh, that would be really good for my cash flow. But then when it's tax time, I am so grateful that I've put the money aside already, because it's just there and I just don't have to think about it. And so you really want to be on top of those due dates. And if this scares you, and if this is really a time where cash flow isn't great for you, pick up the phone. It's surprising how accommodating the tax office will be if you have a plan in place. So I know I can pay this amount by this date every month in order to get me from here to where I need to be and to get me all caught up. They're usually really open and really flexible when it comes to small business, which I've found in the past, which I'm really grateful for, because it's just enabled me to kind of keep my head above water when it comes to making sure that all of my obligations are met. And I want you to have that peace of mind as well. When I wasn't having open communication and when I was really kind of sticking my head in the sand, that's the kind of stuff that would keep me awake at 4 o'clock in the morning, just worrying about how I was going to pay that bill, or what was going to happen next, or how I was going to actually make that work. And so by, putting on my big girl pants and having those brave conversations, because they weren't my forte, they weren't in my natural wheelhouse. It was, terrifying to do in the beginning. It's kind of, I've worked it and built it up as like a muscle. And when you can do that and you can show that you have a really clear understanding of where you're at, then it all becomes a whole lot easier. So I encourage you not to stick your head in the sand, and instead to get really on top of all of the key lodgement and payment dates that you have when it comes to your tax office payments, so that you don't have to pay those penalties. You don't have to be late or forget about it or get really busy working in your business and then all of a sudden, try and catch things up and go, oh, I'm in a pickle and I don't know how I got here. A little preparation and a little planning before we head into this really busy time could really save you from making some big mistakes and paying some big fines and learning some big lessons on the other side. So please make sure you get your paperwork in place. Please make sure you're up to date when it comes to your super. Please make sure you're simplifying what you're doing with, some really smart accounting software. And please make sure that you're super aware of all the due dates that you have so that you can avoid paying those fines and instead spend the money in your business, either reinvesting that into your business to buy cool new equipment or to innovate new things or to look after your team, or you can make some profit, which is even nicer. So those are the things I'm thinking about at this particular juncture of the year. I hope you're thinking about them too. I really appreciate the fact that you're listening to the podcast and supporting us here at Raw Success. I would love you to leave us a rating or review if you haven't already on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us share the podcast with so many more people. And we love it when we can do that. So enjoy. Happy end of financial year. I hope that you get all of your ducks in a row. And I look forward to talking to you next week.